Palestinians run away from tear gas shot at them by Israeli forces during a protest in Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank. AFP. Getty A Palestinian demonstrator runs during a protest against the U.S. Embassy move to Jerusalem and ahead of the 70th anniversary of the Nakba at the Israel-Gaza border. Reuters. A bullet hole on the window of a cafe in Paris, the day after a knifeman killed one man and wounded 4 other people before being shot dead by police. AFP. Getty. Germany's Chancellor Angela Merkel looks on after receiving the Lamp of Peace, the Nobel Catholic Award for her work of conciliation for the peaceful cohabitation of peoples, at the Basilica Superiore of St. Francis of Assisi in Italy. AFP. Getty. Police forensics investigate the death of 7 people in a suspected murder-suicide in Australia. 4 children are among 7 people that were found dead at a rural property in Osmington, near Margaret River. Detectives are investigating the incident, which was said to be treated as a murder-suicide, media reported. 2 firearms were found at the scene, Western Australia police said. EPA missiles rise into the sky as Israeli missiles hit air defense position and other military bases, in Damascus, Syria. The Israeli military on Thursday said it attacked dozens of Iranian targets in neighboring Syria in response to an Iranian rocket barrage on Israeli positions in the Golan Heights, in the most serious military confrontation between the two bitter enemies to date. Reuters. Iranian MPs burning a U.S. flag in the parliament in Tehran. Iran said it will hold talks with signatories to a nuclear deal after U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to withdraw from the accord, which it branded psychological warfare. President Hassan Rouhani also said Iran could resume uranium enrichment without limit, in response to Trump's announcement. AFP. Islamic Consultative Assembly news agency. Newly elected Prime Minister of Armenia Nikol Pashinyan addresses the crowd in Republic Square in Yerevan. The leader of protests that gripped Armenia for weeks was named the country's new prime minister on Tuesday, overcoming the immediate political turmoil but raising uncertainty about the longer term. AP. Russian President Vladimir Putin walks before his president inauguration ceremony at the Kremlin in Moscow. Reuters. Lava from a robust fissure eruption on Kilauea's East Rift Zone consumes a home, then threatens another, near Pahoa, Hawaii. The total number of homes lost within the Lalani Estate subdivision thus far is 21, and geologists from the Hawaii Volcanoes Observatory do not expect the eruption to cease anytime soon. A local state of emergency has been declared after Mount Kilauea erupted near residential areas, forcing mandatory evacuation of about 1,700 citizens from their nearby homes. The crater's floor collapsed on the 1st of May and is since then continuing to erode its walls, and generating huge explosions of ashes. Several earthquakes have been recorded in the area where the volcanic eruptions continue, including a 6.9 magnitude earthquake which struck the area on the 4th of May. EPA. Paradise helicopters. Russian police carrying struggling opposition leader Alexei Navalny at a demonstration against President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Thousands of demonstrators denouncing Putin's upcoming inauguration into a 4th term gathered in the capital's Pushkin Square. AP. Chinese President Xi Jinping speaks at an event to mark Karl Marx's 200th birthday at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. AP. President Vladimir Putin meets with FIFA President Gianni Infantino in Sochi, ahead of the 2018 World Cup in Russia. AFP. Getty. Supporters of opposition lawmaker Nikol Pashinyan protest in Republic Square in Yerevan, Armenia. Pashinyan has urged his supporters to block roads, railway stations and airports after the governing Republican Party voted against his election as prime minister. AP. Cubans marched during the May Day rally at Revolution Square in Havana. AFP, Getty. The sky is the limit. A Saudi man and woman fly over the Arabian Sarawak Mountains in the first ever joint wingsuit flight in traditional dress. A symbolic leap of faith towards women's empowerment in Saudi Arabia. Al-Walid Philanthropies. A general view for the damaged railway station in Al-Qadam neighborhood, after it was recaptured from Islamic State militants, in the south of Damascus. According to media reports, the Syrian army continued the military offensive it has launched earlier this month against militant groups entrenching in southern Damascus and captured several neighborhoods, including Al-Qadam and Al-Asali, and targeting the remnants of armed groups in Al-Hajar al-Aswad and its surrounding in Damascus' southern countryside. EPA comedian Michelle Wolf attends the celebration after the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Conservatives walked out after Wolf brutally ridiculed President Donald Trump and his aides during her piece. Getty. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and South Korean President Moon Jae-in raised their hands after signing on a joint statement. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, left, and South Korean President Moon Jae-in raised their hands after signing on a joint statement at the border village of Panmunjom in the demilitarized zone, South Korea. The Korean War will be formally declared over after 65 years, the North and South have said. At a historic summit between leaders Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in, the neighboring countries agreed they would work towards peace on the peninsula, with a formal end to the conflict set to be announced later this year. The pair agreed to bring the two countries together and establish a peace zone on the contested border. Korea Summit press pool via AP. Women hold portraits of their relatives, who were victims of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, during a commemoration ceremony in Kiev, Ukraine. Reuters. Rohingya refugees gather in the no-man's land behind Myanmar's border lined with barbed wire fences in Mongda district, Rakhine state bounded by Bangladesh. Myanmar government said on April 15 it repatriated on April 14 the first family of Rohingya out of some 700,000 refugees who have fled a brutal military campaign, a move slammed by a rights group as a PR stunt, ignoring UN warnings that a safe return is not yet possible. AFP, Getty. President Donald Trump, French President Emmanuel Macron, First Lady Melania Trump and Brigitte Macron hold hands on the White House balcony during a state arrival ceremony in Washington. A PA boy walks on a pile of garbage covering a drain in New Delhi. Reuters. Newly ordained priests lie on the floor as Pope Francis leads a mass in St. Peter's Basilica, the Vatican. Reuters. South Koreans cheer during the welcoming event for the Inter-Korean Summit between South Korea and North Korea in Seoul. The Inter-Korean Summit is scheduled on April 27, 2018 at the Joint Security Area in Panmunjom, agreed by South Korean President Moon Jae-in and North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un. Getty A Palestinian slings a shot by burning tires on the Israel-Gaza border, following a demonstration calling for the right to return. Palestinian refugees either fled or were expelled from what is now the State of Israel during the 1948 war. AFP, Getty. Outgoing Cuban President Raúl Castro raising the arm of Cuba's new president Miguel Díaz-Canel after he was formally named by the National Assembly, in Havana. A historic handover ending 6 decades of rule by the Castro brothers. The 57-year-old Díaz-Canel, who was the only candidate for the presidency, was elected to a 5-year term with 603 out of 604 possible votes in the National Assembly. AFP/Getty/www.kubadebate.ku. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announces early presidential and parliamentary elections for June 24, 2018, at the Presidential Palace, in Ankara. Erdogan announced the snap elections, originally scheduled for November 2019, in a move that will usher in a new political system, increasing the powers of the president. He said the new system needed to be implemented quickly in order to deal with a slew of challenges ahead, including Turkey's fight against Kurdish insurgents in Syria and Iraq. AP European lawmakers raise placards reading, "Stop the War in Syria," in protest against airstrikes launched by the US, Britain and France in Syria last week, criticizing the legitimacy of the operation, as French President Emmanuel Macron delivers his speech at the European Parliament in Strasbourg. Macron is expected to outline his vision for the future of Europe, to push for deep reforms of the 19-nation Eurozone, and will launch a drive to seek European citizens' opinions on the European Union's future. AP people participate in a protest against the rape of an 8-year-old girl in Kathway near Jammu, and a teenager in Unnao, Uttar Pradesh state, in Bangalore, India. Reuters fireworks are set off as the final performance takes place during the closing ceremony for the 2018 Commonwealth Games. The wreckage of the Scientific Studies and Research Center compound in the Barza district, north of Damascus, after the United States, UK and France launched strikes against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's regime early on April 14 in response to an alleged chemical weapons attack after mulling military action for nearly a week. Syrian state news agency SANA reported several missiles hit a research center in Barza, north of Damascus, destroying a building that included scientific labs and a training center. AFP, Getty Indian activists gathered to show support for the chairperson of the Delhi Commission for Women, Swati Maliwal, who is on a hunger strike against the alleged rapes in Uttar Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir, in New Delhi, India. According to news reports, Maliwal is sitting on hunger strike, demanding that authorities take strict actions against the alleged rapists. EPA Shiite pilgrims carry a symbolic casket outside Imam Musa al-Khatam's shrine to mark the anniversary of his death in Baghdad, Iraq. Reuters seasonal winds wash tons of debris ashore at Matahari Terbit Beach near Sanur, Bali, Indonesia. Reuters Syrian onlookers gather around rescue teams clearing the rubble at the site of an explosion of unknown origin which wrecked a multi-story building the previous night in the war-battered country's northwestern city of Idlib. The cause of the explosion in the jihadist-held city, which killed more than 10 people and wounded 80, according to the Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights Monitoring Group, was not immediately clear. AFP, Getty protesters try to block French gendarmes during an evacuation operation in the Zone Z, Deferred Development Zone, in Notre-Dame-des-Landes, near Nantes, France. Reuters competitors cross the start line at the annual Pyongyang Marathon. AFP, Getty the body of journalist Yasser Murtaha, 31, is carried during his funeral in Gaza City. He was shot by Israeli troops while reporting on Palestinian protests on the Gaza-Israel border. Reuters supporters of the former South African President Jacob Zuma rally prior to his appearance in the KwaZulu-Natal High Court on corruption charges in Durban. Zuma, 75, arrived to face corruption charges linked to a multi-billion-dollar 1990s arms deal. The graft case against him was postponed until June 8 after a brief 15-minute hearing. AFP, Getty Palestinian protesters run during clashes with Israeli troops at Israel-Gaza border. Reuters presidents Hassan Rouhani of Iran, Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey and Vladimir Putin of Russia posed before their meeting in Ankara. Reuters South African schoolchildren pause next to a portrait of the late South African anti-apartheid campaigner Winnie Madikizela Mandela, wife of African National Congress leader Nelson Mandela, at her house in Soweto. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa paid tribute to Winnie, who died on April 2, saying that Nelson Mandela's former wife was a voice of defiance against white minority rule. AFP, Getty Jewish priests and civilians take part in the Kohanim prayer during the Passover holiday at the Western Wall in the Old City of Jerusalem. AFP, Getty Pope Francis greets the crowd at St. Peter's Square after the Easter Sunday Mass in the Vatican. Christians around the world are marking the Holy Week, commemorating the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, leading up to his resurrection on Easter. AFP, Getty mourners hold back a relative of Palestinian Hamdan Abu Amshah, who was killed along the Israel border with Gaza, during his funeral in Beit Hanan town. Reuters: Israeli soldiers shot tear gas grenades towards the Palestinian tent city protest commemorating Lamb Day. The day marks the killing of 6 Arab Israelis during 1976 demonstrations against Israeli confiscations of Arab land. AFP, Getty: an emotional Steve Smith is comforted by his father Peter as he fronts the media at Sydney International Airport. Steve Smith, David Warner and Cameron Bancroft were flown back to Australia following investigations into alleged ball tampering in South Africa. French gendarmes escort the coffin of the late Lieutenant Colonel Arnaud Beltrame transported by car during a funeral procession, leaving the Pantheon as part of a national tribute in Paris. The French president will lead a national commemoration to hostage swap policeman Arnaud Beltrame killed in jihadist attack. AFP, Getty: Russian President Vladimir Putin visits a memorial made for the victims of a fire in a multi-story shopping center in the Siberian city of Kemerovo. Officials say that the fire escapes were blocked and a PA system was turned off during the fire that killed over 50 people. Kremlin pool photo via AP: at least 64 shoppers have been killed in fire at a shopping center in Russia. A further 16 people were still missing after flames broke out at the 4-story winter cherry mall in the city of Kemerovo in Siberia, according to Russian Emergencies Minister Vladimir Puchkiv. The fire was extinguished in the morning after burning through the night. Parts of the building were still smoldering and the floors of the cinema hall had caved in places, another emergency official said. Russian Emergencies Ministry via Reuters.